Hi everyone, it's Hither Mann here and you're watching another YouTube video, and this isn't just any type of video, this is very exciting. I'm going to be interviewing one guy that I'm so honored to have even in Fortune Academy, and his full name is Allan Kleynhans, and he is incredible. When you hear him speak, he's got a fantastic accent too. We're going to let you reveal that as well in a moment. You can guess where he's from. He's actually been working with some of the biggest names in the industry. He's just come back from a weekend with Tony. How many people were in that place?
About 10,200.
Yeah, so not a small game. We're talking big scale here. And Allan is one of the hand-picked top trainers with Tony Robbins.
We've got worldwide, there's only about 160 people who have ever been made a trainer in the Robbins environment in 35 years. Yeah. Thank you for having me, first of all. It's great to be here.
Absolutely.
And it's I wholeheartedly agree with what you say. Everything is the foundation of everything in life is psychology and mindset.
Yeah.
It's always 80% is psychology, 20% mechanics.
Yes.
And for me, to answer that question, I got interested in this subject many years ago, 29 years ago, in fact.
Yeah.
When I first read Think and Grow Rich.
Amazing book.
Yeah, amazing book. If you haven't read it, you should read it.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal book, and it was that book that actually planted in my mind for the very first time the idea that I could actually make money, because I'd never had that idea before. As somebody who wasn't academically minded at school and somebody who grew up as an only child, we had no money.
Okay.
My parents never owned their own business. Never. They always worked for someone else, and they never owned their own property. They always rented.
Okay.
And when they retired, both of them retired, they got their pensions. It wasn't very long before their pensions kind of stopped, providing the kind of life that they had assumed it would provide for them.
As most people fall into that misconception.
Exactly.
I agree.
So when I read that book at the age of 21 years of age, it was a revelation for me. And that's where my desire started to understand, psychology and money and business and human behavior.
Yeah.
And it's been 29 years and I'm still studying.
Yeah, and he's actually an incredible speaker. You know what, I'm in awe when he speaks, and especially on stage, you guys need to see him build up. You can be wealthy, you can have property, you can have financial trading, accounts, you can do anything, e-commerce, business, but only after you've mastered the mindset. And if you guys know me well enough, you'll know how important I think that whole thing is.
Yes.
Now, one thing I love about Allan, his story is incredible. The fact that he's self-made, notice I only pick self-made people in my team because I think it's a different sort of creature that is self-made as opposed to someone who's like inherited a load of money, etc. What would you say?
No, I would agree. And the funny thing about self-made is that I believe it was Zig Ziglar or Bob Proctor who always says that everybody is self-made, but only the most successful people will admit it.
Okay.
So in other words, even people who are not prosperous or not financially stable are also self-made, because everything comes down to how you think.
That's a really good
point. It's I've had a fascinating journey, and like you say, I've got an interesting story. I think everybody has a story.
Yes.
It just so happens that my story, my past, is littered with moments that were had extreme amounts of adversity. But it was a great lesson, and I suppose that's what led me initially to personal development. Had I not had the kinds of experiences I had when I was younger, I probably would never have ended up with Think and Grow Rich in my hands. I think everything happens perfectly at the right time. And looking back now, I can see that everything happened perfectly,
That's really good. So what would you tell people who are, I hate to say it, but a lot of people like to stay in that little comfort zone where they pity themselves and say, I can't be successful because of X, Y, Z. What would you tell someone who right now is thinking, I know I want to be wealthy, but it's not for me. I wish I could, but I don't know how to. What would you say? Well,
I think the first and foremost is that people who say they'd love to be wealthy, but it's not for them, is probably because they have some conflict there. There's a part of them that wants to be wealthy, but there's another part of them that doesn't believe they deserve it. Or they've probably picked up some subconscious limiting beliefs around money.
Yeah.
Most people want to be loved. In fact, everybody wants to be loved. But if you value being liked or loved higher than you value being wealthy, because most people think if they become wealthy, they won't be liked.
Yeah.
Because they've heard something around money, or they've heard something around people being wealthy or snobs.
Yeah.
So they think, well, I'd rather be loved than be wealthy.
Yeah.
But I think that everything comes down to how you think. So money is really it's all about your self-worth and and how you value yourself.
Yeah.
And your relationship with money is a very, very good indicator of your relationship with yourself and the universe around you and everything, really.
Wow, that's pretty profound, because that statement in itself, your relationship with money, says a lot about your relationship with yourself.
Definitely.
That is incredible, because that's something I've found 100% happens with all my students, no matter what level I can teach them. The one thing that stops them going from here to there all comes to how strong their self-worth is, their relationship with their parents, money in general. How would you define how important is power of association in this?
Power of association is exceptionally important.
Yeah.
It's number one. I mean, all weekend, Tony, I've just spent the weekend, as you said, this past weekend with 10,200 people at the XL.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that Tony drills home all weekend is proximity is power.
That's a good one, yeah.
So, who you hang around with is who you become.
Good.
And, I look at my own life and, I've got some great friends. But it wasn't until I started to really selectively and consciously begin to choose my peer group. People who are playing a much bigger game than me financially and emotionally and in a leadership role, etc. And that my life began to really expand, because then I started putting myself around these people because I wanted to learn, what they knew. And when you start handpicking your peer group like that and you start associating with people who are playing a bigger game, then obviously your own game is going to rise by default. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It rubs off on you. It's like putting that ink in the glass of water.
Yeah.
I used to be one of those people, once upon a time, who I thought I can be that nice, successful person amongst all these people who are struggling with life and they've got the really poor mindset. And I thought, and I'm sure you probably come across people who think it's, I was too guilty. I felt too guilty stepping away. Now, how would you help someone who's feeling that guilt of, I don't want to disown my friends? What would you say to them?
Well, I think that is a tough one for a lot of people, because for instance, they might come to a workshop. Well, let's take UPW for instance, because I spend so much time in that environment. They'll come to a workshop like that, and they'll come away from there and they'll think, well, you know what, I'm hanging around in a toxic environment, but I love my friends and I don't want them to think bad of me, because people hate. They're so afraid of losing love.
Yeah.
So, but it's so important that you have to at some point say, you know what, this environment's not serving me.
Yeah.
And you've got to spend less time in an environment that doesn't serve you and more time in an environment that's going to grow you. So it really does come down to that. And even if you have to be ruthless, and just really, take yourself out of an environment completely. I know I had to do that myself at some point. It doesn't mean you don't love those people anymore. And sometimes people will take that personally. They might take it personally and they might get angry with you or upset with you. But at the end of the day, you've got to remember that nobody else is going to pay your bills.
Yeah, exactly.
No one else is going to create your life. No one else is going to give you your golden ticket.
Yeah.
You have to create it yourself. And if that means removing yourself from an environment that doesn't serve you, you have to make that action. You've got to do it. That's a step you have to take at some point.
Yeah, this is why I love Allan, because he's not going to give you any politically correct answers that are going to make you think, oh, maybe I should just allow them to stay in my life or whatever. He's going to be as cutthroat and as correct and direct to you as you need to be, because ultimately it comes down to decisions and choices they make.
Yeah, I believe in ruthless compassion.
I like that.
Yeah.
I do
so,
too.
you don't choose your family.
No.
But you choose your friends, and you choose your peer group, and you've got to choose wisely. That's very important, because that phrase has been used a lot by a lot of people. But you definitely become who you hang around with. So the people that you spend the most time with, if they're broke, you're probably going to be broke too. So
let's get really in depth with this. Let's say, because a lot of people I've come across, and I'm sure you have too, they struggle with their own family. Like the most closest to home individuals. That subconscious limiting belief, it comes directly from mom, dad, brother, sister. What on earth do we do with them?
Because we get triggered so easily by our parents.
Yeah.
Because when we're young, we look up at our parents and they are idols in our lives. And then as we get older, we discover that they're also human beings and they also make mistakes.
Absolutely.
But what happens is, as an adult, because you've had such conditioning from our parents when we're young, and especially if you have a close relationship with your parents, if they can easily trigger that.
Yeah.
So, often you'll find, and in my case it was especially so, I remember the first time I moved into a beautiful big house, and I remember the first time my parents came around to the house, and as soon as they walked in, my mother said, wow, can you afford this? And it triggered me instantly, and I thought, and I found myself getting upset, and I wanted to say, hey mom, what are you, shut up, Of course I can, otherwise I wouldn't be living here. But it can happen so in such a subtle fashion.
They can just trigger you, then go over the edge.
Yeah, and because we also value the people in our lives, so the close people in our lives, our family, our friends, so we value their opinion. and we have that connection with them, and we also, our identity comes out of those relationships.
Yes.
So often people are so addicted to that at an unconscious level, they can get triggered so easily. And family can be the most difficult, because you have someone who comes to a workshop like yours, they learn about trading, finance, property, etc. And now for the first time in their life, they might think, okay, cool, I'm going to become financially free, right? I've got this plan. And then they go home and they tell their family about it, because they want to share that, because they think their family is going to be their fan group, their fan base or their fan group. And then their family says, are you crazy? What are you doing? It's so risky. Don't do that. Or they saw you coming. What? How much you spend? How much?
Yeah.
And then straight away that person's dreams are shattered.
Tell us the good news. Can you actually help someone fix it?
Change anything. And Tony likes to ask this question, and I keep referring to him because obviously I've been around Tony for 18 years. But it's a great question. But people say, well, can you help someone change even if they don't want to change? And most people will say, no, you can't. They have to want to change, right?
Oh, really? Okay.
And that's not true. You can definitely help someone change, even if they don't want to change. It's by you have to find the right leverage, and when you find the right leverage, then anything can happen.
That's incredible. You know what? Allan is going to be delivering the peak performance package through Fortune Academy, and believe me, I'm going to be front row on that one to learn everything this amazing man's going to teach, because he's going to be teaching some incredible value. All the things that we've been discussing that really stop people from getting to their goals, becoming the person they want to be, aligning their goals with their inner true self as such. It's quite a process. So believe me, this is just tip of the iceberg. I mean, if I could tell you everything that Allan's going to be doing, we'd be here for hours on end. Allan is amazing. Plus, he makes me feel jealous, because let's not go to the other stuff. Who have you been hanging about with? Like the people I used to watch or listen audio, all the audio books, read the books. Who are these crazy people that you...
Well, obviously I've spent a lot of time in Tony Robbins' environment, and I entered that environment for the first time in '99. But I've John Keogh. I know John Keogh, and he's John Keogh was the person who wrote Mann Power 40 years ago, roughly. And John Keogh's work, a lot of Harv Ekker's work is based on John Keogh's work. In fact, John Keogh trained and mentored Harv Eker for a while.
That's incredible in itself. Just understand that he knows Harv Eker, someone who I have a lot of respect for. He knows his mentor, like he's hung out with them. Wow.
So, I've been following people like Bob Proctor, Zig Ziglar while he was still alive, Jim Rohn. I was very fortunate. I can tell you that one of the highlights of my education was when Jim Rohn came to South Africa in 2004 or 5, I believe it was. And he came out there, and he was heavily involved with Herbalife.
Yes.
And he came out to South Africa, and there was a big Herbalife conference, and I was working with the leadership, Herbalife leadership in South Africa at the time, invited to the same conference, and Jim Rohn was there as the head speaker, or the keynote speaker and the trainer. And I got to hang out with Jim Rohn for 3 hours, one-on-one in Sun City over a beer.
I would happily die after that moment, but it's never going to happen because Jim Rohn's no longer with us.
That was awesome. It was such a blessing. It's been 29 years since I found personal development, and it's been a fascinating journey. And I've had ups and downs and highs and lows. And I think my passion for this subject comes from the fact that I've had my own personal challenges around money.
Yeah.
And I had to really learn what was holding me back. I mean, I made a lot of money several times and lost it each time. I'm happy to say that now that my life has never been better, and things are going so well. In the last 5 years have been amazing, and the future looks so bright. But it's taken a long time to learn some fundamental foundation, and premises that a lot of people miss and don't pay enough attention to, that make all the difference. And when you can understand exactly what's going on in the subconscious, and again, the relationship with the self is so important, then everything changes.
And would you say this is something that you could just tackle in a certain period of time, like that much, or would you say it's more of a lifetime thing? Oh,
it's a lifetime thing. It's something that what's great about the kinds of workshops that you run is that people can come to a workshop for 2 or 3 days and they can get some really, really great training. And it provides a great foundation. It's the kickstart they need, but then the training never stops thereafter.
No, which is why we do lifetime for everything. Because this is the great thing about Allan. So if you ever come onto Allan's training with Fortune Academy, just meeting Allan in itself is incredible. He's got great energy about him. Believe me, being around him, you just automatically feel a great aura. So the good thing is that you will be able to have exposure to Allan lifetime, as long as he's with Fortune Academy, and I hope it's going to be a great and long journey, then you have access to him too. So I'm very excited about the whole thing. By the way, if you haven't guessed, it's South Africa. That's the incredible accent, because we love it. We love the accent.
Not Australia.
Oh, is that what you get?
No, but a lot of people ask me, are you from Australia? I say, no, the accent's very different.
And more than anything, his passion for what he does is really what drives me to make sure he's on Fortune, because I can see it in his eyes and it's in his heart that he wants to deliver, to really make a massive change to other people's lives, because he's come from an incredible place where he's had to rebuild himself over and over again. So if anyone can teach you how to do things to the top of that level, it's got to be Allan, because he's more than qualified to teach me than anyone else. I'll be learning a lot from Allan. I'm honoured to have the experience, and I hope you guys will join us soon. So until then, see you soon. Bye. Incredible. This is Allan Kleynhans. That's wrong, isn't it?
Close enough.
No, it's not good enough. Alan.
I was actually waiting to see
I know.
if you remember.
Okay, cut the whole thing.
No, we couldn't leave that in, man. It would be funny. It would be cool.
Allan Calvin Klein, Kleynhans. I keep putting the M in. That's where I get confused. There isn't an M. It's H. Kleynhans.
There you go.
That's easy.